The first thing I noticed was he called me sir. Said it the way you'd say garbage, real polite, but the meaning was all wrong. I handed over my license. He looked at it, then back at me. Leon Carter, he read out loud like he was tasting something bad. You know why I stopped you, Leon? No, officer, I said. My voice was calm. It's always calm. Has been for years. He smiled a little, not a friendly smile. A gotcha smile. Your tail lights out, but we'll get to that. Step out of the car for me. So I did. The door of my old sedan creaked like it always does. I stood on the asphalt, the heat of the engine coming off the pavement. He was a big guy, younger than me. Looked like he spent a lot of time in the gym, thinking about how tough he was. Where you headed tonight, Leon? He asked, circling me. Home. Home? He repeated it like it was a lie. You ex-military, you got that look. Lot of you guys have trouble adjusting. I didn't answer. My silence seemed to annoy him. He stopped in front of me, shining his flashlight right in my face. I didn't flinch. I asked you a question, he said, his voice dropping the fake politeness. I heard you, I said. He took a step closer. You think you're tough. I see guys like you all the time. Think because you wore a uniform you can get a pass. Well, not on my road. He was trying to get a rise out of me. I'd seen it before. A man with a little power seeing how far he could push. It was almost boring. Then he said the word, the one he'd been wanting to say since he saw my face. Look at me when I'm talking to you, boy. The night got very quiet. The word hung in the air between us, ugly and final. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw it then, the little flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He'd thrown his best punch and I hadn't moved. Slowly, so he could see every movement, I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. His hand went to his gun. Easy, what are you doing? I didn't stop. I pulled out a small, worn leather case, flipped it open. The blue ribbon was faded. The metal itself was a little tarnished, but in the glare of his flashlight you could still read it plain as day. Medal of Honor. He stared at it. His mouth opened, then closed. The color drained from his face. All that bluster, all that fake confidence just leaked right out of him onto the dark road. I finally spoke, my voice still quiet. The name on the license is Carter, but you can call me Sergeant. He just stood there, frozen. His whole world had just turned upside down, and I knew this was only the beginning of his very bad night. The cop's name was Officer Dern. I saw it stitched on his uniform. His face had gone from tough guy to a pale, sweaty mess in half a second. His mouth was still hanging open. That's not possible, he stammered. I just looked at him. I didn't put the medal away. I let him look at it. Let the weight of it press down on him. I need to call this in, he said. His voice was shaky. You do that, I said. He stumbled back to his car, fumbling for his radio. I could hear his voice, high and tight, through the open window. Dispatch, this is 7 Adam 12. I need a supervisor at my location. Now. I leaned against the side of my car, the warm metal against my back. I watched him. He was talking fast, his head bent low. I knew what he was saying. He was trying to explain the unexplainable. How a man he'd called boy was holding the nation's highest award for valor. It didn't take long for the cavalry to arrive. Another cruiser, this one a sergeant, pulled up fast, lights off but siren whooping once. A big man with a gray mustache got out. He looked at Dern, who was practically vibrating with panic. Then he looked at me. He walked over, his steps were slow, measured. He saw the open case in my hand, his eyes fixed on it. He stopped a few feet away. Sir, he said, his voice was quiet, respectful. I'm Sergeant Mills. Can you tell me what's happening here? I nodded toward Dern. Your officer stopped me for a tail light. Then he decided to give me a hard time, called me boy. So I showed him my ID. Sergeant Mills closed his eyes for a second, like he was in pain. When he opened them, he looked tired. I see. He turned to Dern. Dern, is that accurate? Dern couldn't even form words. He just nodded, his head bobbing like a cork on water. Mills turned back to me. "Mr. Carter, Sergeant Carter, there are no words to apologize for this. On behalf of the department." I held up my hand. I stopped him. "Don't. An apology from you doesn't mean anything. He's the one who said it." I looked past Mills straight at Dern. "I want him to apologize." Dern looked like he was going to be sick. Mills sighed. "Dern, get over here." Dern shuffled over. He couldn't meet my eyes. He looked at my shoes, at the ground, anywhere but at me. "Well," Mills said, his voice a low growl. I'm sorry," Dern whispered. "I didn't hear you," I said, my voice flat. He swallowed hard. "I'm sorry. It was a little louder this time." "For what?" I asked. He looked up then, his eyes wide with a kind of terror. He knew what I was doing. I was making him say it all out loud. I was turning his humiliation into a public ceremony. For my disrespectful language," he choked out. I didn't say anything. I just stared at him. The silence was heavier than any words. Sergeant Mills cleared his throat. "Sergeant Carter will be conducting a full internal investigation. This officer will be placed on administrative leave, effective immediately." I finally closed the leather case and put it back in my pocket. The movement was slow, final. "You do what you have to do," I said. I looked at Dern one last time. "We're done here." I got back in my car. My hands were steady on the wheel. I started the engine. In my rearview mirror, I could see Sergeant Mills talking to Dern, his face hard with anger. Dern was just standing there, his shoulders slumped, a broken man. I pulled back onto the road. The night air felt different, cleaner. I drove for about 20 minutes, turning off the main highway onto a smaller county road. My little house was at the end of a long dirt driveway, surrounded by trees. It was quiet. It was what I needed after all those years of noise. I pulled up and killed the engine. I sat for a moment in the dark, listening to the crickets. Then I got out and walked inside. The house was exactly how I left it. Neat, simple, a place for everything. I dropped my keys in a bowl by the door and went to the kitchen to get a glass of water. That's when I saw it. A single, white envelope on my kitchen table. It hadn't been there when I left. It had no stamp, no address, just my name written in block letters, Leon Carter. I put the glass down. The room was silent. I hadn't told anyone I was going out. I lived alone. No one should have been here. I picked up the envelope. It was heavy, not with paper, something else, something metallic. I tore it open and tipped the contents into my hand. A single old brass key fell out, and a photograph. The photograph was grainy, taken from a distance. It was a picture of a house. A nice house, 2 stories with a big porch. It looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. I turned the photo over. There was writing on the back. 3 words. "He isn't finished." I stared at the key in my palm. I stared at the photo, and I knew with a cold certainty that my quiet night was over. The cop, Dern, was the least of my problems. Someone else was playing a game, and they had just dealt me in. The key was cold in my hand. Brass, old, the teeth worn smooth in places. A key that had opened a lock many times. The photo was standard drugstore quality, the kind you get in an envelope an hour after you drop off the film. The house was generic suburban. 2 stories, white siding, a green lawn. But it tugged at a memory, a dusty corner of my mind I hadn't visited in a long time. "He isn't finished." The words were written in a tight, controlled script, black ink, ballpoint pen. I placed the key and the photo on the table. I walked through my small house, room by room. I checked the windows, the locks, the back door. Everything was secure. No signs of forced entry. Whoever left the envelope had a key or knew how to get in without leaving a trace. I went back to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I drank it slowly, looking at the items on the table. This wasn't about the cop. This was separate. This was older. The phone rang. The landline, a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring 4 times before I picked it up. I didn't say anything, I just listened. Breathing, then a voice. A man's voice, raspy like stones grinding together. You showed him the metal. I didn't respond. The key, the voice said. It's for a locker bus station. You have 24 hours. The line went dead. I put the phone down. They were watching me. They knew about the traffic stop. That meant they were either police or they had someone inside the police. The sergeant, Mills, the kid, Dern, or someone else listening to the radio traffic. I looked at the clock on the stove. It was 10:17 p.m. I had a decision to make. I could call the police. That would be the normal thing to do, but the police were already involved, and someone had just broken into my home. Or I could handle it myself. I'd had enough of other people handling my problems. I put the key and the photo in my jacket pocket. I went out to the car. The night was still and dark. I stood for a moment listening. No cars, no footsteps, just the hum of the night insects. I drove back toward town, not to the bus station. Not yet. First, I needed to know what I was walking into. The public library was closed, but it had public internet terminals outside under an awning. I parked and walked over to one. The screen glowed in the darkness. I did a reverse image search on the photo of the house. I used a few different sites. Nothing. It was a pre-digital photo. No metadata. I needed another way. I thought about the voice on the phone. Raspy, damaged. I thought about the key, a bus station locker. This was old school. This was someone from a different time. I drove to the county records office. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. The building was dark. I parked around back. The lock on the rear door was simple. A few seconds with a piece of flexible plastic and I was inside. The air smelled of dust and old paper. I found the property tax rolls, microfilm. I spent an hour looking at records from 20 years ago. I was looking for my name, my old name from before. And I found it. The house in the photo, 1412 Willow Lane. I owned it, or I had owned it, a lifetime ago, before the army, before everything. I hadn't thought about that house in years. I'd bought it with Sarah. We were going to fill it with kids, a future. Then she got sick. The cancer ate her up from the inside, and after she was gone, I couldn't stay there. I couldn't be in those rooms with all those ghosts. I sold it and enlisted the next week. I sat back in the chair. The green glow of the microfilm reader was the only light in the room. Why that house? Why now? The phone in my pocket vibrated. A text message from the same unknown number. A single word. Tick-tock. I stood up. I left the records office, locking the door behind me. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Dawn was coming. I drove to the bus station. It was a crumbling concrete building on the bad side of town, the kind of place where people went to disappear. I parked a block away and walked. The inside smelled of bleach and urine. A few people were sleeping on plastic chairs. A janitor pushed a mop across the stained floor. The lockers were along a back wall. I found number 217. It was an old gray metal locker, scratched and dented. I took the key from my pocket. It fit. The lock turned with a heavy, solid asterisk clunk asterisk. I opened the door. Inside was a single item, a VHS tape, no label. I closed the locker and walked out. I got in my car and drove. I didn't go home. I drove to a thrift store that was just opening. I bought a small TV and a VCR for $20. I took them to a motel on the highway. I paid cash for a room for the day. I plugged in the TV and the VCR. I slid the tape in and pressed play. The screen flickered to life, black and white footage, a security camera. The timestamp in the corner showed a date from 15 years ago. The location was an alley behind a bar I used to go to. A younger version of me was in the alley. I was arguing with a man, a big man. His name was Frankie Calabrese, local muscle, a bad guy. The audio was grainy, but I could hear the words. You owe me, Leon asterisk Frankie said. I don't have it, I said. You'll get it or else. Then the younger me shoved him. Frankie stumbled back. He pulled a knife. A blade caught the dim light. We struggled. It was fast, a blur of motion. Then Frankie was on the ground, not moving. The younger me stood over him, breathing hard. Then I ran. The screen went ecstatic. I stared at the buzzing screen. I had forgotten that night. I had buried it deep. Frankie had been leaning on me for a gambling debt from a stupid period in my life. The fight was a panic, self-defense, but I ran. I was scared. The next day I heard Frankie was in a coma. He died a week later. No one ever came for me. I thought I'd gotten away with it. I guess I was wrong. My phone rang, the same number. The raspy voice was back. Memory Lane is a dangerous street, Leon. What do you want? I asked. Justice, the voice said. Frankie was my brother. Then I knew. The voice belonged to Vincent Calabrese, Frankie's older brother. He was older, smarter, more dangerous. He'd gone away for armed robbery years ago. He must be out now. You have the Medal of Honor, Vincent said. A national hero. But heroes don't kill unarmed men in alleys and run away, do they? It was self-defense, I said. He had a knife. The tape doesn't show that clearly, does it? Vincent said. It just shows you standing over his body. Then running looks bad, especially for a hero. I said nothing. He was right, it looked bad. Here's what's going to happen, Vincent said. You're going to do a job for me. One little thing. And then this tape goes away forever. What job? A man has something that belongs to me. You're going to get it back. I'm not a thief. You're a killer, Leon. Let's not pretend. You can be my thief for a night, or you can be the nation's disgrace tomorrow morning. Your choice. He gave me an address, a warehouse on the industrial side of the river. Be there at midnight. Come alone. If I see any cops, the tape goes to the news. He hung up. I put the phone down. I looked at the static on the TV screen. I had spent my whole life trying to be a better man, trying to atone for my mistakes. I had done things I was proud of, things that earned me that piece of blue ribbon and medal. And now, a ghost from my past was going to take it all away. I had until midnight. I had to make a plan. The static from the TV was the only sound in the room, a high-pitched whine that seemed to drill into my skull. Frankie Calabrese. I hadn't thought his name in 15 years. I'd packed that night away in a steel box in my mind and sunk it deep. Now Vincent had dredged it up. Self-defense. It was the truth, but the truth didn't matter. Perception did. And on that grainy tape I looked like a murderer, a man who ran. They'd give me the medal with one hand and take it back with the other. The humiliation would be absolute. It would undo a lifetime of service. I ejected the tape. It was my ghost now, my burden. The address Vincent gave me was for a warehouse in the old industrial park by the river, a place for things that were forgotten, fitting. I had hours until midnight. I needed to know what I was walking into. I drove to a payphone outside a gas station. I called an old number from memory, a number I hadn't dialed in a decade. It rang twice. Yeah, a wary voice answered. It's Carter, I said. A long pause. Jesus, Leon Carter, I heard you got a medal. I need a name, I said. Vincent Calabrese, he's out. What's he into? The man on the other end, a guy named Marty who knew things he shouldn't, sighed. Vincent, he's old school, but he's connected. Runs a crew that hits armored cars. Nasty piece of work. Word is he's planning a big score. The kind that sets you up for life. Where? Don't know, but he's been leaning on a guy named Petrov, an importer. Has a warehouse down by the river. He's the fence. The address he gave me matched the one Vincent had given me. So Vincent wanted me to steal from his own fence. A test of loyalty, or a way to tie up a loose end using me as the rope. Thanks, Marty. "Hey, Carter, be careful, Vincent. He doesn't just kill you, he erases you." I hung up. Petrov the importer. So that was the job. Steal something from Petrov. Something valuable enough for Vincent to blackmail a Medal of Honor recipient to get it. I drove to the library. This time I used their computers to look up business licenses. Petrov Imports, owned by Anatoly Petrov. The warehouse was his. I pulled up satellite images. It was a big brick building with a loading dock and a small office attached. High fence, probably good security. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I bought things for cash from different stores: dark clothes, a pair of wire cutters, a small, powerful flashlight, a lockpick set. I wasn't an expert, but I knew the basics. I also bought a cheap, prepaid phone. Then I drove to a spot near the warehouse and waited. I watched the comings and goings. A few trucks. A couple of men who looked like they knew how to handle themselves. Petrov was protected. At 11:30 p.m., I parked my car a mile away and walked through the quiet, deserted streets. The air by the river was cold and damp. The warehouse loomed ahead, a dark shape against the slightly less dark sky. The fence was 10 feet high, topped with razor wire. I found a spot in the shadows, used the cutters on the chain link, and slipped through. I moved quietly across the yard, keeping to the darkness. The office door had a simple deadbolt. It took me 2 minutes to get it open. Inside it was quiet. The office was messy, filled with invoices and shipping manifests. I ignored it. Vincent didn't want paperwork. I moved into the main warehouse. It was vast, stacked high with crates. The air smelled of wood and dust. I used my flashlight, keeping the beam low. I was looking for a safe, something that would hold the kind of score Vincent was after. I found it in a small, windowless room at the back. A floor safe, big and heavy. I knelt down. This was beyond my skills. I couldn't crack this. Then I heard a sound, a soft click behind me. I turned. A man stood in the doorway. He was huge, holding a pistol with a suppressor pointed at my chest. "Don't move," he said. His voice was flat, professional. I stayed still. My mind raced. This wasn't a guard. Guards don't use suppressors. "Vincent sends his regards," the man said. It was a setup. Vincent never wanted me to steal anything. He wanted me here. He wanted me dead. A final piece of revenge. The hero killed while committing a burglary, the ultimate disgrace. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. I had one chance. I threw the flashlight at his face. The beam cartwheeled through the dark. He flinched, firing once. The bullet whined past my ear and buried itself in a crate. I was already moving. I lunged low, tackling him around the knees. We crashed to the concrete floor. The gun skittered away. He was strong, but I had surprise and desperation. I drove my elbow into his throat. He gagged, his hands clawing at his neck. I hit him again. He went limp. I stood up, breathing hard. I found his gun. I tucked it into my waistband. Then I heard sirens, distant but getting closer. The gunshot someone had heard. I ran. I burst out of the office and sprinted across the yard. I squeezed back through the hole in the fence just as blue and red lights flashed at the far end of the street. I melted into the shadows, my heart hammering against my ribs. Vincent had tried to have me killed. He framed me for a burglary I didn't commit. The tape was still out there, and now the police would be looking for me. I was a hero with a medal in one hand and a gun in the other, running through the night. I needed to find Vincent. It was the only way out. I had to find him before the police found me. I pulled the prepaid phone from my pocket. I had one card left to play. I called the only person I could think of. Sergeant Mills answered on the first ring. "Mills." "It's Carter," I said. There was a heavy silence. "Carter, where are you? We have a bolo out for you, burglary at a warehouse. Shots fired." "It's a setup," I said. "By Vincent Calabrese. He's Frankie's brother. He has a tape from years ago. He's using it to blackmail me." "Where are you?" Mills repeated, his voice tight. I need your help, Mills, not as a cop. As a man, I need an address. Vincent Calabrese's address. That's not how this works, Carter. You come in. We'll sort this out. They'll take my medal, Mills. They'll take everything. After what happened with your officer tonight. You think they'll believe me? I need to handle this. I heard him breathing. I was asking him to cross a line. Please, I said. It was a word I rarely used. A long pause. Then quietly, the old shipyard, Pier 7. He has a boat there, the Serenity. It's a damn joke. He hung up. The shipyard, it made sense. A place to disappear. I started walking. It was a long way, but I needed the time to think, to plan. Vincent had men. He had resources. I had a stolen gun and a burning anger. I reached the shipyard as the sky was beginning to turn gray. The place was a graveyard of industry. Rusting cranes stood like skeletons against the dawn. I found Pier 7. The Serenity was a shabby-looking cabin cruiser, rocking gently in the dirty water. There was one man on deck, a lookout, smoking a cigarette. I moved silently along the pier, staying in the shadows. I came up behind him, the butt of the pistol in my hand. I hit him once hard on the back of the head. He crumpled without a sound. I stepped onto the boat. The cabin door was unlocked. I opened it and stepped inside. Vincent Calabrese was sitting at a small table drinking coffee. He looked older, his face a roadmap of hard living, but his eyes were the same, cold and dead. He looked up unsurprised. Leon, I heard there was some trouble at the warehouse. The tape, I said, give it to me. He smiled a thin, cruel smile. It's not here, it's somewhere safe. If I don't check in by morning, it gets mailed to every news station in the state. Then I guess you and I are going to be spending the day together, I said. He laughed, a dry, raspy sound. You don't get it, do you? You already lost. Even if you kill me, that tape gets out. Your name is mud. Your medal is a joke. You're finished. He was right. This was a checkmate. He had thought of everything. Then why shouldn't I just kill you right now? I asked, raising the gun. Because you're a hero, he sneered. Heroes don't do that. I looked at him. I looked at the man who wanted to destroy me for an accident from 15 years ago. An accident his brother started. I lowered the gun. You're right, I said. I turned and walked out of the cabin. I stepped off the boat onto the pier. I started walking away. Hey, Vincent shouted from behind me. Where are you going? This isn't over. I kept walking. I didn't look back. I heard him come out onto the deck. Carter, you come back here. I own you. I stopped. I turned around. I looked at him standing there on his boat, furious and confused. No, I said, my voice calm. You don't. I reached into my pocket and took out the Medal of Honor. I held it in my palm. It was just a piece of metal, a symbol. It wasn't who I was. I looked at Vincent. Then I drew my arm back and threw the medal into the river. It spun once in the air, a flash of blue and gold in the dawn light, and then it was gone, swallowed by the dark, dirty water. Vincent stared, his mouth agape. You're insane, he whispered. I turned and walked away. I didn't need a medal to know who I was. I didn't need a piece of tape to tell me my past. Vincent could send his tape to whoever he wanted. It didn't matter anymore. I was free. A week later, I was packing my car. I was leaving. This town had too many ghosts. There was a knock on my door. It was Sergeant Mills. He was alone. Carter, he said. He looked tired. Mills. We found the tape, he said. A copy showed up in the mail at the station. I nodded. I figured it would. We looked into the Frankie Calabrese thing. The official report from back then mentioned the knife. It was logged into evidence. The case was closed as self-defense. The tape doesn't change that. I looked at him. What are you saying? I'm saying the tape is irrelevant. Your record is clean. As for the medal, what you did was stupid, but I think I understand why you did it. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, wet leather case. He held it out to me. My Medal of Honor. I have a friend in the Coast Guard, he said. A diver. Took him 3 days to find it. The ribbon's ruined, but the medal is fine. I took it. It was cold and heavy in my hand. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know, he said. He turned to leave. Get out of this town, Carter. It's no good for you. He got in his car and drove away. I stood there holding the medal. It was just a piece of metal, but maybe it was a little more than that. Maybe it was a reminder, not of what I did to earn it, but of who I decided to be. I put it in my pocket. I got in my car. I started the engine. I didn't know where I was going, and for the first time in a long time that felt just fine.